The night my mother called to tell me what they'd done, I was standing in my kitchen in Winnipeg, still in my coat, grocery bags on the floor, and I couldn't move. Not because I was shocked. That's the part that still gets me. I wasn't shocked at all. I was just done. Like something inside me finally stopped trying. Let me back up. I'm the older daughter. My parents have 2 kids, me and my younger brother Adrian. I'm 31. I work in healthcare administration at a regional hospital. I own a small condo in the West End. I pay my own bills, file my own taxes, cook my own meals, and I have done all of that since I was 22 years old, because that was when I understood quietly and without drama that nobody in my family was going to do it for me. Adrian is 28. He's never held a job for more than 8 months. He's charming, funny, and completely unreliable, and my parents have spent his entire adult life calling that finding himself. He's lived at home twice after moving out. He borrowed money from my dad 3 times that I know of and paid none of it back. Once, he borrowed my mom's car for a weekend and returned it with a cracked bumper and an explanation that lasted 45 minutes and involved a story about a parking lot in Kelowna that made no sense. My parents smiled through all of it. Because Adrian is the one who calls every Sunday. Adrian is the one who sits with my dad watching hockey and laughs at his jokes. Adrian is the one my mother worries about in that soft, indulgent way. The way she never worried about me, because I was always fine. I was always fine because I never asked for anything. And I never asked for anything because I learned early that asking didn't work for me the way it worked for him. My grandmother, my dad's mother, Grandma Faye, she saw it. She was one of those women who didn't say much but watched everything. She used to make me tea when I came over and let me sit in her kitchen without having to perform happiness for anyone. She told me once, when I was maybe 19, "You have good bones, sweetheart. The kind that hold up a house even when the walls are cracking." I didn't fully understand what she meant until much later. She passed away 4 years ago. She left things to different people in the family. I didn't know what she left me specifically until about 2 years after she died, when her estate was fully settled and I got a letter from a lawyer in Saskatoon. She had set up a small trust in my name. Not enormous, but real, enough to matter. She'd been putting money aside for years quietly without telling anyone. The letter said she'd updated the trust 3 times. The last update was 6 months before she died. I never told my parents about it. I don't know exactly why. Maybe instinct. Maybe I already knew, somewhere I couldn't name, that telling them would change something. That was 2 years ago. I kept the money in the trust, let it sit, let it grow. I thought about using it to pay down my mortgage faster. I thought about it a lot, actually. But I didn't touch it. It felt like it meant something to keep it intact a little longer. Then I got engaged. His name is Fletcher. We met 3 years ago through a mutual friend at a trivia night at a bar on Portage. He works in software infrastructure. I'm still not entirely sure I could explain what he does in a way that would make sense to anyone, including myself. But the short version is that he started a company with 2 friends from university. They built something that other companies now use to manage data storage, and about 18 months ago a larger firm acquired them. Fletcher still runs the technical side. He works from home most days in a hoodie. He makes his own sourdough. He drives a 2019 Civic that has a small dent in the passenger door that he keeps saying he'll fix. My family didn't know about any of the company stuff when they first met him. He doesn't talk about money. It's not something he leads with, not something he performs. When I told him early on that my family had always kind of measured people by what they had, he said, "Then let's just see how long it takes them to figure out I'm not useful to them." And he said it without any bitterness, just observation, and I thought, yes, this person sees things clearly. We got engaged in March. He proposed at home, our home, because I'd basically been living at his place in River Heights for a year. He made dinner. It was no big production, just candles in the ring, and he said, "I want to keep doing this with you. Specifically this. Tuesday nights and grocery runs and the way you steal all the blankets." I cried. I'm not someone who cries easily. I told my family that week. My mother's first question was about the ring. My father's first question was about the wedding. Specifically, and I want to be precise here, because the wording matters. My father said, "Have you thought about the budget? You know we set aside money for you girls." You girls, like the 2 of us were a category. Like there was a matching set of futures sitting in a savings account somewhere. He'd told me years ago, when I was maybe 24 or 25, that he and my mother had been putting money aside for when the girls get married. I'd thanked him and moved on, and honestly barely thought about it since, because I was busy living my life, and the idea of a wedding felt abstract. I didn't know the amount. I didn't ask. It wasn't something I planned around. That phone call was in March. The next call that mattered came in August. I was at work when my mother called. I didn't pick up. I was in the middle of something, so she left a voicemail. The voicemail said, "Hi, sweetheart, call me back when you get a chance. I want to talk to you about the wedding fund. There's been a bit of a change in plan, and I think you'll understand." I listened to it twice. A bit of a change in plan. I called her back on my lunch break, sitting in my car in the hospital parking garage. She told me that Adrian had gotten into some financial trouble. She used those words exactly, financial trouble, like it was a weather event, and that he'd needed help, and that they'd made the decision to give him the wedding fund money to help him get stable. "But he's not even getting married," I said. "He needed it more right now," she said. "That was money for my wedding. We know and we're sorry the timing isn't ideal, but you're doing so well, and Fletcher," and here she paused. "Fletcher seems like he can handle things. Fletcher seems like he can handle things." I sat in my car for a long time after that call. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but I didn't. I felt something colder than crying. I thought about all the years I'd been doing so well. I thought about how doing so well had always been used in my family as a reason to give me less, not more. I thought about how Adrian's inability to function had always been treated as a need to be met, while my ability to function was treated as proof that I didn't need anything. I called Fletcher. He picked up on the second ring. "They gave the money to my brother," I said. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "Okay. Are you somewhere you can sit for a bit?" "I'm in the parking garage." "Okay, stay there, I'll come." He drove across the city in the middle of the afternoon to sit with me in a parking garage. We didn't talk about money. We didn't talk about the wedding. We sat there and he held my hand and eventually he said, "Do you want to go get lunch somewhere? The Thai place by the legislature is open." That was it. No rage on my behalf, no plan, no speech. Just, let's get lunch, let's keep moving. We can deal with the rest later. We didn't tell my parents that we knew yet. I needed time to think about how I wanted to handle it. Fletcher was patient with that. He said, "We can confront it whenever you're ready. Or we can just decide it doesn't matter and plan the wedding ourselves. Either way." The confrontation came on its own. My parents invited us for Thanksgiving dinner in October. My brother was there too. Adrian, back living at home for the third time, cheerful and relaxed in the way that people are relaxed when they're not carrying any of the weight. He greeted Fletcher like they were old friends. Fletcher was polite, measured. He put his phone face down on the kitchen table when we sat down and didn't touch it. At some point during dinner, my mother said something about the wedding, something about how exciting it was, and my father said, with the tone of a man who believes he is being generous, "We do feel bad about the timing of the fund. Hopefully you two can manage. We know you'll figure it out." I looked at Fletcher. Fletcher looked at my father for a moment. Then he picked up his phone, looked at it, and said very quietly, "Should I tell them what my company sold for?" My brother looked up. My father's expression shifted. My mother's fork stopped moving. Fletcher put his phone back down. He wasn't performing anything. He wasn't showing off. He said it the way you'd say something mildly factual like mentioning the weather or a sports score. My father said, "Sorry?" Fletcher said, "I sold a software company last year. I didn't bring it up because it's not really relevant to whether your daughter and I should get married. But if the concern is whether she'll be taken care of financially, I can clear that up." There was a silence. Adrian said, "Wait, what kind of software company?" And Fletcher named the acquiring firm, one of the larger tech companies in the country. The kind of name that even people who don't follow tech know. My mother set down her fork completely. What happened next was not immediate warmth. That would have been insulting. What happened was a shift, visible and slightly nauseating, in how my family oriented themselves toward us. My father got quieter in the way people get quiet when they're recalculating. My mother started asking about the wedding with a sudden new attentiveness. Adrian started asking Fletcher questions about the company, about the industry, about whether there were investment opportunities he should know about. I watched all of this from across the table and felt something I can only describe as a long, slow exhale of clarity. They didn't love me more in that moment. They didn't suddenly see me differently. What changed was what they thought they could get. We left early. Fletcher thanked my parents for dinner, put on his coat, held the door open for me. In the car, he didn't say anything for a few minutes. Then he said, "You okay?" Yeah, I said. I think I've known this for a long time. Tonight just made it visible. He nodded. What do you want to do? I thought about it. I think I want to stop pretending we're the kind of family we're not. He nodded again. Okay, that sounds right. I called my mother the following week. I told her that I loved her, that I wasn't angry, but that I needed some space and some honesty. I told her that giving my wedding fund to my brother, a fund that had been set aside for me, for a specific purpose, was a decision that communicated something about how they saw me, and that the decision had been made without any conversation with me, and that was something I needed to sit with. She cried. She said I was being sensitive. She said it wasn't that simple. She said that Adrian needed them more right now. I said, he's needed you more my entire life. I've understood that, but I'm telling you it hurt, and the response can't be to tell me it didn't. She didn't have an answer for that. I didn't stop talking to my parents entirely. I want to be honest about that, because the version of this story where everything goes silent and clean is not quite accurate. We still talk. But something changed in me, and that change is permanent. I stopped managing their feelings about how things went. I stopped filling in the silence in a way that made everyone comfortable at my expense. When my mother says things like, "We just want everyone to be happy," I say, "I know, I want that too," and I don't add the piece where I sacrifice something of mine to make it true. My brother asked me, sometime in November, whether Fletcher's company was actually hiring. I told him I didn't know and that he should look at the website. He followed up twice. I didn't respond. Fletcher and I planned our own wedding, smalls. 40 people, at a venue on the Assiniboine River. We hired a caterer we liked, a photographer we liked, and a musician Fletcher had seen at a festival years ago. The whole thing felt like us. Like something we'd actually chosen, rather than something we'd assembled from obligation. And then something happened that I hadn't planned on. About a month before the wedding, the lawyer in Saskatoon contacted me again. Grandma Faye had included a provision in the trust that I'd somehow never fully absorbed the first time I'd read through the documentation. The trust had a release date. It would release additional funds upon my marriage. I hadn't thought about this because I hadn't been planning around it. The number was larger than I expected. Larger than the original amount. She had been adding to it for longer than I knew. There was a note in the file, written in her hand, that the lawyer read to me over the phone. For my granddaughter, who never asked for what she deserved. It should have been given freely. Use this well and use it happily. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time after that call. I thought about Grandma Faye sitting in her house in Saskatoon, years ago, quietly putting money in an account with my name on it. I thought about the way she'd made me tea without asking if I wanted it, because she'd already noticed I needed it. I thought about how she'd said, "good bones," and how I'd been holding those two words in the back of my mind for over a decade without fully knowing why. I didn't tell my parents about the trust. I've never told them. That money belongs to a relationship that doesn't include them. A relationship between me and a woman who decided, without being asked, that I was worth taking care of. The wedding was in January. It was cold. The way January in Winnipeg is always cold. The kind of cold that hits you in the face when you walk out a door and makes everyone laugh a little out of shock. The river was frozen. The light at that time of year comes in low and golden in the afternoon, and somehow the photographer caught it perfectly in a shot of the two of us outside, me in a white wool coat and Fletcher squinting into the sun with his hand on the small of my back. My parents came. My brother came. They were well behaved. My mother cried during the ceremony, the good kind of crying, and my father shook Fletcher's hand for a long time. I noticed all of it. I was pleasant. I was present. I was also, for the first time in my life, genuinely unbothered by what they thought of any of it. I wasn't there performing for them. I was there for me. Fletcher and I danced to a song we'd picked because we both liked it, which seems like an obvious standard, but had felt like a small radical act when we'd made the decision. My best friend, who'd been the one to invite me to that trivia night 3 years ago, who'd watched me slowly understand my own family over 2 decades of friendship. She gave a toast that made the room laugh, and then got quiet. She said, "She's the kind of person who takes care of everything and everyone so quietly that you might not notice." Fletcher noticed, and I hope she knows the rest of us see it too. I did cry then, not a performance, just the real thing. Afterwards, when it was just the two of us in the hotel room, Fletcher poured 2 glasses of wine and handed me one and said, "So, we did it. We did it," I said. "How do you feel?" I thought about it honestly, like I built something from the ground up, like nothing about this came from someone handing it to me. Like that's actually fine. He tipped his glass toward mine. It's more than fine. We've been married 8 months now. My parents and I have found a kind of equilibrium. Not the one I had before, where I absorbed everything quietly and pretended it didn't accumulate, but a real one, with some honest distance built in. I see them a few times a year. I'm cordial. I'm not cold. My brother is still figuring things out, which I've made a kind of peace with. He's not a bad person. He's just someone who was never made to carry his own weight, and at this point, I think that's a damage that belongs to him to work out, not to me to solve or resent. Grandma Faye's money sits in an account that we've started adding to ourselves. We're going to buy property with it someday. Or travel. Or something we haven't thought of yet. What matters is that we'll decide together, and the decision will be ours, and it will be built on something that was given to me freely, by someone who loved me without requiring me to earn it first. That's what I think about when I think about all of it now. Not the wedding fund. Not the dinner table in October. Not even my parents and the long, complicated architecture of how they chose to love me. I think about a woman in Saskatoon, making tea, watching me from across a kitchen table, deciding quietly that I was worth it. She was right.